What if I told you that Sinners is genius, not just for the story, but for the hidden metaphors that director Ryan Coogler carefully put into the film? For instance, how Sinners is a metaphor for the African American experience in the United States, using vampires to show how black folks have been historically robbed by white folks in this country. Let me explain my theory. In the first act, Slim tells Sammy a story about how he got arrested by a few white sheriffs, but after him and his partner Rice played music at the jailhouse, the sheriffs got the idea to take them on the road to play for rich white folks.
See, these white folks we playing for? They're real money.
Slim and his partner got rich, but after Rice bought a train ticket to start his own church, white folks found all the money he made in his pocket, said he stole it from another white man,
And they lynched him right there in the railroad station.
Just in this story alone, we see two examples of blood-sucking going on. One, when the white folks use Slim and Rice's music, turning them into a traveling band to play for other rich white people. The second is when white folks stole Rice's money from him at the station outright. The first thing I thought of when this revelation came to me was Elvis. Elvis is a complicated musical figure with good and bad qualities, but his style was heavily influenced by black music, and he profited greatly from that while the people who pioneered it didn't get much recognition. Stealing is by far the most prevalent sin in Sinners. The twins steal from the Irish and the Italians, using the money to start their own juke joint. These two men are caught trying to steal from Smoke here, which he shoots them for, and these incarcerated men labor for free under the hot sun.
So you rob trains and banks, but you can't steal this pussy for a night.
I've read that southern states passed black codes immediately after emancipation that criminalized things like unemployment, loitering, or not having a labor contract. Black men were arrested on these pretextual charges, convicted in kangaroo courts, and then leased to plantations, mines, and railroads as convict laborers. The state got paid, the company got free labor, and the man got nothing. If you remember, Slim says he was arrested for vagabonding as a traveling musician.
His husband back and forth up the Delta. We get busted for vagrancy.
i.e. loitering and not having a job, which is the same kinds of things southern states criminalized after emancipation. I don't think it's a mistake that all three of the vampires that come knocking at the juke joint are white either, given how much white Americans have stolen from black folks in the past. Music, fashion, vernacular, dance, and food are some of the biggest things white folks stole from black folks. It's interesting how the vampires see this soulful blues music and the magic of it and want it for themselves. It feels like a pretty explicit nod to American history. Other examples of this stealing theme include this motif of vultures we see and hear in Sinners. For instance, vultures fly overhead as Stack drives Sammy to the train station. Vultures fly over the old mill just before Smoke and Stack buy it. And finally, we see vultures flying overhead this couple's house after they let the vampire in. The song the vampires sing to Smoke and Stack at the juke joint is "Pick Poor Robin Clean," which has lyrics like, "I picked his head, I picked his feet, I would have picked his body, but it wasn't fit to eat." It sounds a lot like what the vampires are doing here, and it sounds like what vultures do. They pick the flesh off dead bodies. We also see vultures, it looks like, in the opening narration by Annie, as she talks about how different cultures share the same legend. I've seen other Sinners analysis talk about how the church is vampire-like as well. For instance, when Sammy comes to his father at the start of the movie, flashes of Remick appear on screen as his father speaks to him. With this editing, it feels like Coogler is trying to show that preachers like Sammy's father are vampires to a certain extent. When they hug, the camera shows Sammy's face, and his father's face is angled towards his neck, which kind of makes him look like a vampire. You might say, this is just how people look when they hug, Tom. Well, in the reverse shot, Sammy's face faces away from his father's neck. They end their hug and Sammy looks at the congregation. While he does this, Remick's followers screaming in agony flashes on screen. It's almost like his father's congregation is being compared to the vampires that follow Remick. In the first 4 minutes of the movie, Ryan Coogler subtly tells us exactly what the movie is about without us realizing a thing. Another clear connection between the vampires and the church is in the way the vampires talk. When they arrive at the juke joint, they talk about how they want to all be family for a night.
Can't we just, for one night,
just all be family.
This promise of connectedness is a key aspect to what the vampires try to sell Smoke and the crew. They talk about how the world is a messed up place and how they can have heaven on earth right here if they turn everyone to vampires.
We're gonna start ourselves a new clan based on love.
The way she holds up her hand and delivers these lines, yep, that reminds me of how religious people talk 100%. One of my favorite moments is when Slim asks Vampire Cornbread what they should be doing, and he says,
being kind to one another and being polite.
It just sounds like typical proper church-going people from the South who preach about kindness and politeness with a smile while being guilty of doing heinous stuff behind the scenes. It's interesting that the embodiment of the devil and sinners is such a smooth talker. Vampires were a good pick to show this particular brand of evil because since Dracula, vampires have been shown as very intelligent creatures who speak well while hiding an evil underneath. The overall idea of Christianity is one of love, unity, and kindness. It's a very attractive message, but the problem is that Christianity, historically, was used as just another way to enslave black people in the United States. One way the movie shows this is when Slim tells Sammy that
blues wasn't forced on us like that religion.
Historically, white folks used a particular version of Christianity to control black folks, one that emphasized obedience, submission, and acceptance of one's station. Passages like, servants, obey your masters, which is Ephesians 6:5, were preached heavily and deliberately. Christianity was also used as a way to separate black folks from their own spiritual traditions. Organizations like the Society for the Propagation of the Gospel framed conversion as part of a civilizing mission, the idea that African spiritual traditions were primitive and needed to be replaced. This became ideological justification for both slavery and later colonialism. One other thing is, the vampires, when turned, all act the same, don't they? They're basically one big conglomerate, kind of like a church congregation. One moment that drives this home is when the vampires sing Picked Poor Robin Clean together.
Pick poor Robin clean. Pick poor Robin clean.
It sounds like the congregation singing This Little Light of Mine at the start of the film.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.
Speaking of that, pay attention to people's costumes in this church. They're all wearing white in here. It invokes a feeling of connectedness, of sameness, but white is seen in another key aspect of the film, which are the cotton fields that our main characters drive through many times. The cotton fields work best as a visual metaphor for enslavement. Our main characters drive through them a lot, and it kind of puts them on a pedestal, showing them as free men to a certain extent. But still, the plantation surrounds them. The spirit of slavery still lives on here, and it goes as far as the eye can see. It makes the main characters feel trapped and free at the same time. At one point, Sammy tells Smoke,
"Look, I'm leaving that plantation just like y'all did."
He says this right after telling Smoke he wants to become a touring musician. He refers to where they're from as the plantation. Maybe Ryan Coogler is trying to make a connection between the church and slavery itself, and how the church tries to wipe out black folks' history and call certain behaviors sinning just to control them and get them to assimilate into white culture. Assimilation is another huge motif in the story that ties into what the vampires do. When bitten, the vampires all become the same. Seeing the Chows, a Chinese couple speaking in a perfect Southern accent with perfect Southern mannerisms, threw me when I first saw the movie. It's really what everyone in this story needs to do. Smoke is a straight shooter in the film, who doesn't have time for fairy tales or ghost stories. He tells Sammy, "We're going to give it to you straight," after Sammy asks about Chicago being some sort of heaven for black people. Smoke replies that it's the same as Mississippi with big tall buildings instead of plantations. We get the sense that Smoke isn't necessarily a bad person, he's just had to assimilate into this cruel world and be a little cruel himself. He talks to Sammy of a town called Mound Bayou, a city of free slaves.
Stack, you figure we get to Mount Bayou? Small town, right here in Mississippi. Find about free slaves.
He speaks of it like an oasis in a messed up world and tells Sammy to go there and to
leave all this here improper shit to us.
Stack represents seeing the world with imagination. Stack does have vision, like he says after Smoke closes the door on him.
No vision.
He's the one who wants to open the juke joint today. He's the one who wants to let folks pay with wooden plantation money. In one sense, that's good for business because the best businessmen can imagine new possibilities where others can't. The problem is that the world sucks and will throw every obstacle in your way to make sure your vision doesn't come true. Smoke represents a more pragmatic worldview. He sees the world for what it is, and is ready for all the BS that comes with it. When Smoke says that the best part of him was Stack, he means it, because you can't have all pragmatism and no vision, and you can't have all vision and no pragmatism. They complement each other perfectly. I think, though, that Stack does represent the devil a little bit. He's the one that comes to Cornbread and Slim offering deals that sound too good to be true. Perhaps Ryan Coogler and company are trying to warn the audience of smooth talkers like this, promising money and other crazy things. Maybe not because the smooth talkers are bad, but because this world is more unforgiving than even they might realize. Maybe Coogler is trying to show that folks need to be like Smoke, vigilant and on guard, so they don't get taken advantage of in this crazy, money-obsessed world. Money plays a huge role in Sinners. We've all heard of the famous phrase, money is the root of all evil, which comes from Timothy 6:10, which actually reads, the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. You see, the actual devil in this movie is this man right here who sells the twins this old mill. He aptly enough is the Grand Dragon of the KKK, aka the big head honcho with connections to a monster who breathes fire. Yeah, that sounds like the devil to me. Money is connected to a lot of the fatalities in this movie. For instance, Stack slips Slim $1 into his hat while he plays and promises him a huge payday if he plays at the juke joint tonight. Same with Cornbread. His wife hears talk of money and tells Cornbread to go with Stack. The KKK couple that lets Remick into their house only does so when he offers them gold coins. It's the same gold they give to Mary. She forgets she has it in her hand still, and then they attack her. She then gives it to Stack inside the juke joint, which he accepts. Minutes later, he's turned into a vampire. When the vampires try to get into the juke joint, Remick says,
We just came here to play. Spend some money.
And what's the final thing the Grand Dragon of the KKK says before Smokes smokes him? At the very end of the movie, when Stack visits Sammy one last time, he gives him $200 bills. And just think about the name Stack for a second. Stack, like stacks, as in stacks of bills. With this money motif, the meaning of Sinners starts to break wide open. If you remember, Annie takes fake money from the children buying items at her store. Smoke tries trading with her to give her some real money, but she refuses, saying that,
I ain't stupid. Your money come with blood.
The subtext being that money and the system that puts money on the highest pedestal is rotten to the core. Smoke and Stack had to learn how to navigate this money-obsessed world. Smoke is a businessman, a man of numbers, profit margins, and being on time. He teaches this young girl how to negotiate, preparing her for the real world. Later, Smoke and Miss Chow negotiate the price of a sign. They both have had to assimilate into this world of money. After Sammy performs, Smoke asks to see him in the rafters. Smoke talks of Mound Bayou. The mayor of the city said that Smoke's dad was an evil man and that there was no way he didn't pass that evil on to them. Smoke and Stack's own people didn't let them in, so they had to learn how to survive and thrive in a white man's world, working for Al Capone and stealing just to survive. This is such a key part of the story, the fact that the twins couldn't get into Mound Bayou. Near the end of the film, we see the black folks that were inside the juke joint become vampires themselves. They all dance together outside in one of my favorite scenes in the movie. Is this representing how black folks join the white man's system and turn against one another in the process? Like Cornbread says,
Well, it be your own peoples.
Another key part of this is what Annie says.
They live on, even if the one that made them is killed.
If we're using vampires as a metaphor for this bloodthirsty, money-obsessed world, this line of dialogue means that once you join the system and become one of them, you'll always be one of them, making this evil particularly difficult to expunge. Annie also says that vampires are cursed to stay in their own bodies and can't join the ancestors. They can't feel the warmth of a sunrise and are stuck here with all this hate. It's really sad. Slaves brought from Africa not only had to work without pay, but now they have to join the white man's world, which is vicious, money-obsessed, and turns people against one another. They have no choice in the matter either, since they're not the ones in positions of power to change anything. It is a forced assimilation, a forced baptism, if you will, which we see Remick doing with Sammy at the end of the film. And what's worse is how these vampires, these white folks, see it as them saving the black folks. Like Remick says to Mary,
I'm sad as all, but I don't need no saving.
Yes. Yes, you do. You all do.
Sinners is brilliant because it shows the foundational immorality of the world black folks are brought into. It shows the hypocrisy in calling folks sinners when the entire money-obsessed system that America is built on leads to all sorts of evil itself. And finally, it shows via allegory how vampires run this corrupt system and how, to thrive within it, you must become a vampire yourself. Thank you so much for watching. What did you notice in Sinners? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you like this film analysis, consider subscribing to my channel. I publish new film analysis every week. I'll see you next time.